Hello everyone, my name is Piotr Kononow and I'm the CEO and founder of Dataedo. Welcome to my webinar titled How to Discover and Classify Personal Data in Your Databases. Today I will show you how you can scan your databases and find sensitive personal data stored in various places. First I will start with some theory. I will talk about what personal data is and why you should care about it. And also I will explain what data classification is and how you can use it in your organization if you're not already. Then I'll go to the demo of the tool with practical know-how. And then we can move to questions. If you have any questions, you can use the questions tab on the right-hand side of the screen. You can do it during my presentation, or you can do it at the end. I'll try to answer all of your questions. Okay, so let's move on. So let's start with explaining what personal data actually is. Personal data doesn't have one definition. It can be different things used by different organizations or people to refer to something slightly different. There are some regulations like GDPR, CCPA, or HIPAA that define this term quite well, but your organization can define it quite differently. The very broad definition would be that this is any information that can lead to identification of a specific person, a physical person. And this is the center. The physical people are the center of many of those data protection regulations, right? Like GDPR. So examples of fields could be names, emails, phone numbers, but the list is quite long. During the demo, I hope I'll be able to show you that it's not just the obvious one. It's quite broad, and every of those regulations define it differently, and your organization can define it even something else. Why would you care and find this information in your databases in the first place? Well, because you need to, from the legal perspective. There are many regulations that were introduced recently, and they are still being introduced regarding personal data. They are broad regulations like GDPR or CCPA that apply to all the entities in certain area. GDPR is European, CCPA is Californian. There are also industry regulations like HIPAA. There are some regulations in financial industry. Well, in short, I believe it's very useful and it's necessary to actually protect the data. So you need to know where it is, and I hope I'll show you it's not that obvious. And also then you're required often to delete this personal data if the person requires, and you have to need some policies in place to delete the data after a certain time. Let's move on to data classification. What is data classification? You can hear that term that can appear in any data protection or the data protection context. So that means applying predefined categories to documents, some data elements, or any piece of information. So anything that is a subject of protection, of data protection in your organization can be labeled as one of those categories of sensitivity. On the screen, you can see that those documents are categorized as sensitive, confidential, and public. And also, you can classify specific fields in a database. Okay, there are very different approaches you can define those classification categories or levels. This is a sample one. This is one of those the very typical. So you group them so you can think of them as a pyramid. So on the bottom, in this case, there's a public information that you can be accessed freely to the public outside of organization, and yeah, no restrictions there. Then there's proprietary, private, confidential, and sensitive. So from the least to the most sensitive, and you should focus on those most sensitive in the first place. There are many more schemes. So like in this case, you have highly sensitive, restricted, internal, public. You can see on the screen many more. There are also some defined by regulations. So these, the ones I showed you previously, can be defined by organization ad hoc. And these were defined by legislation. So, GDPR specifies 3 levels: special category personal data, and non-personal data, which is like unclassified information. HIPAA, which is health data, defines critical, restricted, and public. The logic in all of them is the same, so there are different levels, and you should be taking care of the protection the most regarding those most protected, most critical ones. Here also, the US government used to do it a long time before any of those regulations appeared. NATO used to do it. There's an ISO standard for this. Yeah, here I jump into the fact that it's not that obvious. When you think of personal data, you can think. Some of you might think that it's just okay. Let's check our customer records, like customer table or employee records in the employee table. That's protected. That's personal information. But actually, databases contain a lot of information in other places which are not that obvious, and that should also be on your radar. So an example of this information could be all the transactional tables, like orders. Well, you can think that this contains mostly information about the products, but actually there can be information of the names or emails of the person as well, not only in the customer's table. There are some backup tables also. So admins sometimes, apart from their usual regular backups, then they copy some tables somewhere or create some temporary tables and which are never deleted. That happens. There are some audit tables and fields, and there's a lot of them. So audit tables is something that just works like a log. So if you log all the incoming orders in some table or file, then you capture actually emails and names, and this is also a personal information you should be managing properly, you should be protecting. So maybe you should anonymize this or delete it after a while. There's some policies you need to have around this, and to do it properly, to manage it properly, you need to be aware where that is actually. So it's not that obvious where this data is. And if you think about the fields like created by or modified by, which are very common, then you can think of almost any tables in a CRM database, ERP database, or all the other databases. They are very common, and that applies to all the tables. Before I jump into the demo, here's a funny cartoon for you. I will now prepare my demonstration. Okay, I hope it made you laugh at least a little. Let's jump into the demo. Okay, so right now I'd like to show you the actual tool and how you can use it to scan your databases and then classify or label or categorize the sensitivity levels. What you have on the screen right now is the desktop application. It's Dataedo. So if you'd like to get it, you could go to our website. If you're not a customer already, then just click the try button. Then you will be able to download it from the website, install it on your computer, on your personal machine. It's an executable, and then you need to set up the repository, because we not only scan your databases, we also it's all based on the repository of metadata. So we scan databases and then we import the metadata into this one protected repository. the classification takes place over there. So you need to set up the repository. I'm not gonna get into the details, but you need a SQL Server database. There's a free version called My SQL Server Express, and you need to talk to your admin to get it installed if you don't have it in your environment somewhere. Well, once you set that up, you are good to connect your databases to all the data sources and feed the repository with metadata. What you see over here is my repository. There's the location of the repository, and my idea is to scan all the databases like ERP, CRM, data warehouse, all kinds of sources. Currently, we support mostly relational databases, although we do have an ODBC connector, which allows you to connect to most of the sources, including CSV files or Excel files. I have imported a couple of databases already. You can see that here's a CRM, here's some sample adventure work database, data warehouse. And I have scanned and imported the tables. To import those connections, you need to click Add, because when you start there, it's empty. You don't have those. You don't have this metadata. You click Add. You choose Database Connection. Then you choose one of the predefined connectors. We have a different. We support different databases. We are adding more every time. We want to support natively NoSQL databases in the future, and some flat files as well. And we have this generic ODBC connector. It requires you to install ODBC connector to your source and configure it. We have guides on our website. It's not always super easy. If you need support, just let us know. But with a guide on our website, I hope it will be feasible. So if you have an SQL Server database, just choose this one, provide a connection, then connect, and it scans your database, and that's what's the result. So list of tables. There are other things imported as well, but in this case, we are just focused on the tables. We are not interested in views and procedures and all those kind of scripts. So let's see contact, for instance, table. Go to columns. We have imported all the schema, all the metadata, like column names, data types, and so on. Some other not so important metadata. There's also a description field if you have it in your database already. Okay, so that's the first step to populate your data catalog. So you need to go source by source, and when it's done, you can now go to the actual discovery feature, discovery and classification. This is available over here, data classification functionality. And when you click that, you get two of the predefined classification functions, discovery and classification functions. If they are shipped with the product, and they have a predefined list of masks. I'll explain in a second how it works, how it scans the database. And so it's a predefined function, and what's important to know that you can add your own functions and you can modify them. I'll just mention that at the end. Okay, so let's choose GDPR. Now the catalog is scanned, and what we get right now is the list of all the fields that this function, our product things contain specific type of a personal data. So what we see here is a column names, different column names, because we look at the column names. So here are the different column names in the entire catalog. You can see which table this is in. You can see what exactly column this is. You can see which database this is. So like an address line exists in a couple of databases, in AdventureWorks database and in two tables in data warehouse. You can see a data type as well. And what you get here are the suggestions for the classification level. So that's something I just shown you. So these are in case of GDPR, there are 3 levels of predefined classification levels, categories. This is personal data. There's also a special category of personal data, and there's non-personal data, which actually it's not restricted by the GDPR. So you see those suggestions over here in a column called the GDPR classification. And you also have a column called data domain. Domain is something we call a type of data, like a class of data. So that could be address, that could be address, location, bank account, email, ethnicity, all kinds of things that are grouped into this category to help you actually find the specific data you are interested in. Because if we look at say email, then it can get different names of specific physical columns, right? But this is all the email, and that's what we are interested in. And the same with I don't know, like credit card number. Also very different amount. That's actually weird. So the different fields are grouped into one logical type of data. So yeah, let's so this is just a search function, and let's now save some of that information. So I'll select that none, and let's have a look at the email, right? So let's click email, and yeah, those are all the fields that were found. As you can see, there's quite a lot in such a small catalog. If you do it in your environment, I'm pretty sure there will be much more. Because this is quite a popular data element, and as I said, it can exist in very different tables in different contexts. Yeah. So what you do right now, we just we select those fields and save. So what happens now? Let me clean a little. So this is not important here. So what you see right now, when we go into the catalog, and let's say this contact table. So a part of this metadata that has been extracted from the database, we have another 2 fields, GDPR classification and GDPR data domain. And you can see that those fields, those values have been populated by the classification function. And this is now saved in the catalog. So this is available for the future reference. You can or people who can access this can also edit this information. You can see here. So if you say, okay, but this is not actually it's not considered personal data in our organization, you can always choose this field or introduce your new categories. And the same goes with the domain, right? Okay, so this is what's in the catalog. If let's have a look what happens if we do all of them. So let's just click save for all of those fields. And yeah, we get a lot of different classifications in just one contact table. You can see that we have a name, gender, date of birth, and so on. And yes, you can see that, for instance, it found 2 special category personal data, which is defined by GDPR. So if you'd like to know what other fields are classified like that, you can go to the data classification and data classification explorer. If you click that, then you get all the fields that have any value provided in one of those fields for this particular classification. When we add more, there will be more options available. So right now I can see, I can filter, I can export it to Excel, I can share it with somebody, and I can see where do we have this very special types of categories, types of personal data in our ecosystem. So you can see there's in data warehouse in a couple of places. There's in this sample data adventure warehouse database. There's CRM, and so on. If you introduce your special categories, then your custom categories, you can do the same thing, and all the fields are available in summarized in this one report. All this information it was prepared by the function, and it is available for further manual curation. So you can edit all those fields, including the empty ones, right? But first, apart from the report I just showed you, you can also export and share the entire catalog. So one of the features of Dataedo is the ability to share the catalog in the HTML format, and you do it by hitting export, yeah, and you choose the template and so on. And what you get is the HTML searchable and easily browsable page that contains all those definitions and metadata, and those fields are visible right next to the database fields, right? So you see all those information here, and you can see those two categories, two fields of the GDPR classification. You can see a PII field over here. I exported that before the demo, and that shows you that you can have two parallel classifications schemes implemented in your data catalog at once. So let's say you want to get ready for GDPR, you want to have this generic PII, this is the American PII definition, I guess, and you can have your additional custom one as defined in your organization. In future, we'll like to add to another fields for CCPA, for instance, and the sky's the limit. We can define up to, I believe, 100 custom fields. So yeah, you can define multiple parallel classification schemes in one catalog. Okay, let's get back to the curation. So these are, I told you that we look at the column names, but let's take this sample database I created, called test, and let's look at the salary table. Quite often, in many applications, especially the packaged ones like CRMs, ERPs, and all the supply chain management and all kinds of packaged applications, there are fields that do not actually reflect what's actually being processed and stored in this particular field. Many applications have those customizable fields, and they tell nothing to no one. And Dataedo can allow you to provide a so-called title or alias for this field. So the physical name of this is field 1, but let's say that in the salary table, this means actually in our implementation, it means social security number, right? So if I write a title, not only that will appear in the catalog, so people browsing the catalog documentation, they will be aware of what that means, because that's far from obvious. But also our search function right now can look at this field as well and suggest, let's see, that works. Yes, and suggest you that this is a social security number. Yeah, so that requires some documentation made up front, but that is something you should be doing for other purposes, like reporting, like the implementation of the applications anyway. So if you have that in one catalog, then it's much easier to scan that information with our tool, right? And another thing is that let's say we are very consistent in the use of this field 1. So let's say field 1 always means the SSN. We can now find all the fields in the catalog. In our case, this is just 2 of them. So what I could do. Oh, let me first save that information. Right, like this. I could do it manually directly here, but let's use this this algorithm. So if I go right now to this summary field, I could, if I'm sure, I could copy this information like this, and then it will be easier to. It will be it will enable the system to find that field as well. But I could also do it manually over here, right? I can see, oh, this field is classified with personal data label. So let's do the same thing here. Let's just copy it, right? If I save and I go to the table 1, I will see the same information over here, right? Okay, so the titles. Another option, another place that our system looks at is so-called business glossary. Business glossary is an advanced metadata management artifact that I believe every organization should have if they want to be successful with data. This is a definition of the terms, of the business terms used in the organization, and the definition is, the names are unique and the definitions are don't leave you any room for interpretation. Like most important or most famous case is the customer. Everybody in the organization would understand it differently, and if you'd like to do reporting or do a simple thing as counting customers, everyone would get the different results. So it's a good idea to create a common glossary where everyone can look up the definitions, and our tool allows you to build such a glossary. So let's have a look here. We have definitions, we have terms and their definitions. Yeah, this one's empty, but yeah, those definitions should be more advanced than that. But what you can also do is to link those terms to the data catalog. So I could use titles, but let's say this holds email. It's a good approach to provide an email title over here. But what I could do, I can link it to the email term. That gives me a benefit of not only knowing that this is email. The email is quite obvious one, but I can also look up. Yeah, let's provide it some description. Yeah, it's quite obvious, but just to show you the idea, I can look up the common definition in the organization, right? Yeah, it's supposed to work. Well, anyway, in the export, I mean, in the tool, you can look up the definition from the data catalog, from the physical data dictionary catalog. So what that gives me is the ability for this tool to also check this information. Let me do it for one more field. I have created also a test field, test term. Oops, sorry. So let's have in mind those two fields, right? They're now linked to those two terms. And when I run this thing once again, what I would expect, yes, so that's something I expected. So right now they found the test table and test2 column, and it thinks that this is an email, right? So that's very good, right? So it's found the type of the information just by looking at the linked business glossary. But what it didn't found was this field, and because the test term doesn't mean anything, it doesn't say, it could be some more meaningful example. That's just for the demo purposes. But let's say that test term is also classified. So let's provide this a classification. Let's say that this is some kind of special category of classification, and let's say, I don't know, it's something else, secret. Right. Let's say it's a super secret field. Okay, and what I expect right now is that the system will recognize this field as well. Yep, so it worked. Field 3 right now is suggested to be special category, and secret domain, right? So if I save it, yeah, those categories will appear here, and so the system is smart enough to look at the column fields, titles or aliases, and also linked terms and their classifications. So some of that requires actually populating the catalog. So the easy part is just to scan the database. It takes, you know, a couple of minutes, maybe, well, an hour or so. The definition of those terms and titles and aliases, it's not as easy, but it's valuable regardless of the classifications. It's a very valuable asset to have anyway. So I advise you to build that. It takes time, but the value that accumulates it's quite big. It can have a very high return on investment. Okay, so I showed you how this works. I also mentioned that you can modify this. Modify those functions and create your own. This is an advanced function. It requires some knowledge in SQL, in databases. You connect to the repository, and you'll see the two tables. One is the list with actually three of them. One is list of classification functions, so just a new row. Then there are masks, what fields, so what patterns we should look for, and the last one is linking those patterns to a specific classification function, and the information about the suggested classifications or domains. So these values. So this is you can provide your own custom framework. It's quite easy. It takes a little time maybe, but then you can scan all the data, all the databases, all those hundreds of fields automatically. So I think it's takes much less time anyway to do it manually, and then you can repeat the process whenever you connect to a new source or some new tables arrive. Okay, so I believe that's it for the demo. If we can move to the presentation. So that was the demo. Now, if you have any questions, go ahead, use the tab on the right. I have two questions asked before. The first one is, do we support document databases such as MongoDB? The answer is you could connect to MongoDB, but those documents which are structured hierarchical, then they are representative in not the best manner. They are split into different tables, and so you could connect with using ODBC, but we are working on a MongoDB connector and some other connectors as well, so that you can import the structure and fields in the same way I just shown you. And the other question was regarding data lakes and flat files, right? So let's say you have a data lake with a lot of CSV files. So we would like to scan that as well. And the tricky part here is whether those CSV files have titles. So we did an R&D. It's going to be released in a couple of months. And if you have a CSV file that has those header row that titles the specific columns, then the structure and the names can be imported just like with the table. And if that's not available, then you get just names like field 1, field 2, and so on. And you would need to work just like I shown you with those field 1 and 2 and so on in case of regular tables. So you can provide aliases and then scan it. So yeah, so that's it. I do not see any more questions. I'll give you just maybe a minute. In the meantime, if you're a customer, then what you need is the enterprise license. If you hold Pro license, then you need to get an upgrade. Go ahead, reach out to me, or go ahead to our website and use chat function to contact my colleague Tom. He will provide the information. If you are not and you'd like just to see and test it in your environment, then go ahead, get a trial. We have a 2 weeks free trial. It's available under the link provided on the screenshot right now. You just go ahead and run a test yourself. Okay, I see no questions. Then thank you very much. I hope it was insightful, and I hope you can boost your data protection initiatives with Dataedo. Thank you.